Hey, bitches. We are here with um Scribbler Mouth. Because I just came across him talking about some stuff that I was like, no. Oh, great! It's another person who has not that many subscribers, really. Kind of small. Um, you gotta wonder, it's not a Hank Green, so it's like how, but I mean, you're looking at me, so I'm not gonna judge based on size. No, I have way more videos of science and stuff. However, let's well, obviously we have to subscribe so I can know what the hell. Oh shit. Honey, I'm gonna just have to tell you, you are, oh God, there's a 22,000 video. Yeah, no, you're on my radar for
This leaking
I
of
will totally let's get this over with. Information paradox?
real reason quantum particles change their behavior when observed scares the shit out of me. When you shoot
I'm sorry.
light through two slits, you get an interference pattern because
Yeah.
light behaves like a wave and it interferes with itself.
It really made me reevaluate how light is supposed to work because when he says,
If you fire just one photon at a time, you still get that interference pattern.
okay, normally I would say one, electrons do that, and two, you end up with the interference pattern because of the EM field, which no one references because they don't know how the EM field works, like a fluid. However, this is light, which means light is also a dot, and the EM field is just as much excited by light as it is by electrons. And someone's calling me. I am not answering. Sorry. Not now.
So, what's it interfering with? Well, quantum objects like
You don't understand how the EM field works, so you're going to say something.
photons don't definitively exist in space or time like normal objects do.
No, they are tiny little particles. They are a factor of magnitude or whatever times smaller than an electron, and they actually have a tiny bit of mass, which is interesting. Which everyone says they don't have mass, but they have some kind of thing that operates like mass. Well, yeah.
They are in what's called a superposition. A single photon will literally travel through both slits and interfere with itself.
Okay, this is actually nonsense. If you take that photon and you point and shoot, you get one dot at the end.
But the moment you try to observe which slit it actually goes through, everything changes. It stops acting like a wave and starts acting like a normal particle.
That's because you're interfering with the EM field with the laser of the camera, which is how you're using it to measure the thing. It's not just a camera, it's an EM field disturbance. Literally not even a camera, it's something else. Pretty sure.
Just going through one slit. So it appears the act of observation changes the particle's behavior. Now, this is terrifying, but not for the reason you may think.
I don't care about the word terrifying, you're just boring now.
Because it's not your consciousness doing it, but I promise it's just as weird. An observation doesn't need an observer. It's really when a particle interacts with its environment and gives off some information about it. This
You're going into hippy-dippy land.
leaking of information is called quantum decoherence and
Eh,
is really what is changing the particle's behavior. It's
it's really not.
not so much knowing about the particle that changes its behavior, but the potential to know. The instant information exists about the particle, the universe in some unknown mechanism forces it to.
Yeah, because you're not looking at the mechanism of fluid dynamics and the EM field, because you're not thinking about how it's interfered with by the camera, or not a camera. It's definitely not a camera.
Take a more definitive state. But here's
If you say, okay, listen, if you're using a camera to do this and it makes the interference stuff, I would say, yeah, that's weird. If you're not using a camera, then you're saying all of this with false pretense, because if it's some kind of laser beam that gets interfered with and is more accurate and stuff, then you have to understand you're already doing some interference with the EM field that's blocking the waviness and whatever. But if it's just a camera, it's different. Guarantee you, you look at the papers and whatever else, it's not just a camera.
the really weird part, because modern quantum theory tells us that the most fundamental aspect of reality is really information. All the
Yeah, but no.
matter and energy of the universe are really just emergent properties manifesting from a more fundamental information field. As
Yeah, you're going into what other people may have said and whatever.
famously put, it from bit. All of physical reality, the it, comes from bits of information. But this
Again, if that were to be true, why would dividing a gamma ray create electrons? Right? Gamma radiation, whatever, like specific energy that you use and then you transform it into electron and a positron pair. And that means, if you really think about it, the photon has structure. That structure, when divided in two, creates a spinning momentum of, like, it's constant, like the electron-sized spin, that the diameter of the electron is, in fact, a photon that is just curling on itself like a rocket with a bad fin, and it just does that because it doesn't have a choice. It can't go straight anymore. It's lost like half of its guidance system or whatever, or half of its directional control. So it turns into an electron, which is a theory that I only recently heard about, but I adopt immediately because of the idea that I've had for a long time that particles have structure. But you're not in that field yet. You don't get it. You haven't heard that paper, maybe, or also you're not even considering structure, or also you don't know how electromagnetism works, or the EM field in general.
could tell us something about our consciousness. Consciousness may not arise from physical matter, but rather both matter and the mind could be seen
I'm ignoring you.
as different expressions of the same underlying informational
No.
substrate. In what's called the integrated information theory, consciousness might just be an emergent property of sufficiently complex information processing that
I mean, it is a theory. Okay, sure.
matter, like the brain, only helps to facilitate. But it makes me wonder, why does information exist if not
That makes me wonder is why would CRISPR make DNA do the things that CRISPR does make it do? And you got to think that there has to be, you would think that there would have to be a differentiation system that says do this, do that, do the other thing. And all the DNA makes the stuff. And that whole thing is like there has to be some kind of reason behind the processes. Because, like, why the hell is your nose always where your nose is? It's never on your cheek or something. It's never on your wrist, you know? Like why couldn't your lips be on your nipples? Like these things just don't happen because your DNA knows where to go and whatever else. That's the really interesting stuff that I like to think of how to solve to do because maybe you could, I don't know, figure out how bodies are actually made and then, you know, make wings for people.
To be received, or perhaps perceived.
Yeah.
Now, I know I'm getting speculative, but is consciousness an illusion of biology or something more fundamental? Well, the answer, or perhaps the question, is not very clear. Now, I put a lot of work into these videos, and some people do try and steal them.
I'm not stealing shit. I'm reacting to you. And I don't think you know what you're talking about because you don't know EM field, which is the general thing that you have to know with electricity that has already been proven to be the way energy is transferred, not electrons moving through the wire, but an EM ripple. And this ripple happens regardless of the other matter. It's an excitation in all of the motion of stuff. But that ripple, you have to understand that, like any time that you think of electrons, it is something that is connected to protons only because of some connection there. What is that connection? Fluid. Because it is something. It's leading to and from the electron. It is the electromagnetic field stuff. And anyone knows anything about electric motors and generators is that the harder they go, the more energy is involved. So when you shoot an electron through space, you're interfering with the electromagnetic field in the space to make a wave that goes ahead of the electron. Or the photon, I suppose, also does the same thing. Interferes with the electromagnetic field, and then you get the ripples, which is the interference pattern making stuff, and then the electron or the photon goes along the paths that the pressure waves of the ripples pushing on either side, making the interference pattern stuff. Everyone understands this. You can test it out with some water and ripples and stuff that you can make with your hand in a dish on your sink at home. Everyone can do this. And then you just have something like pebbles or a little spice in there, and you can be like, you can see where the spice would land and whatever else. And it's the same kind of fluid dynamic stuff that happens in the double slit experiment. Fluid dynamics, really basic. So the question then becomes, what is the fluid? It's the EM field, not electrons, because electrons would have to be the fluid that's interacting with itself. No, it's the EM field, a smaller thing, completely separate. We don't know what the EM field is made out of. However, the assumption is that it's the very primary stuff. It's smaller than photons. It's invisible, which is why some people don't understand that it could be the dark matter and the dark energy that we've been looking for. But I'm just wanting to talk about your specific nonsense, which is information bullshit. Because everyone knows that when you actually do this experiment with the camera and the nonsense, that is a sensor, it is a beam that is not just a camera. Guaranteed. So I'm already upset with you and whatever else. And you don't understand? I can't, I could grade your video, but I already gave you like a response. I don't know what just away is supposed to lead to, but the interference pattern and photons make sense. Just away is not something I think should be a link, but whatever. Is this guy rage bait? I don't know. That's the problem. I looked at the idea of this most recent video, 206,000 views. I already got upset about that, except for it starts with a stupid paradox having to do with truth and lies, and then it has to do with the idea of how do we get the universe to happen, which has nothing to do with Pinocchio. So whatever. And of course, open-ended question can't have an answer, doesn't have an answer, just shows you there's this question. It's interesting, right? And it's like, how could the universe have come to be? But also, better question, how did it matter? How did um, life even become? And I'm working on it, okay? The growing theory is that life didn't even need to start because water came onto the earth after the earth was forming because of uh, freaking comets and whatever hitting it later, is what I think people have been saying. Um, it's very possible that whatever started off life could have already been something that was generated for billions of years, and then it got frozen for like, I don't know, the time it takes for the world to regenerate itself. And then who cares? It ends up just being like panspermia, where you have. Now, here's the thing. That would mean that in order for that to really work, you have to have the idea in your head that a freaking tardigrade could have existed in an asteroid frozen for a billion years or something. That's crazy. And the DNA and whatever else and blah 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 split off from something that was either the tardigrade or something else as well. Like, um, but here's the thing: when I looked at other frozen DNA junk, okay, the frozen DNA junk usually ends up leading to, well, DNA is just going to break down after a certain amount of thousands of years, simply because of interactions. But in the outside of space, there are no interactions of air and whatever else. So what's to stop the DNA from, would the DNA even degrade out in space? Well, you got radiation from the sun directly, so it's actually more likely to not survive in space. The only thing that would survive is an already existing being. So you'd have to, again, the tardigrade idea is great and fantastical until you realize time frames, and then it becomes hard. So you still have to think of, it didn't exist in a previous sun's existence, because our sun is not the first sun series. We're like 3 or 5 down the line or more, which would give life a lot more time to be able to generate. But if you must make everything on Earth, then we have a bunch of candidates already about what could have happened. But it's like, I mean, you start with some plants and shit, right? But then how do you actually, like, you gotta think about single amino acids and blah blah blah, and something working on towards making something. And, like, I haven't looked into beginning building blocks stuff as we know of. I just haven't looked into it as enough as I could to give you any definitive answers about stuff. And it's something I'm interested in deeply. But is it really important to answer those questions? We know how DNA and stuff can work. The answer is, how could life ever have started before DNA? And that's also something that's fun to think of and do things with in the Fury realms. And it would be cool.
Did you know our
It would be cool to have some kind of answer on that front. And I would like to do that. I would like to put in at least some kind of thought towards it with any amount of educated like information about exact details of what we know started everything. But if I'm not mistaken, the one thing that I thought that we started off with was like the dude who has the phalanges or whatever. And it's like, we're talking about a thing that when I look at it, it's a goddamn machine. And we cannot start with a machine. That's insane. A structure that is a machine for making a spinning turbine little thing like sperm have, or little bacteria that have those same phalanges. This is ridiculous. Why would we start at something so complex? We would start more at viruses, right? But then how do viruses even do their thing? Because they have nothing to them. Like there is a semi aliveness to them, but how do they even live and do anything? Right? Viruses are like protosperm, but they're more violent about things. And they don't actually make anything. They just make more of themselves. So whatever is already captured in that DNA is like, we're gonna just make more of that and make you make more of that. So it's like a thing that could have happened later on, which is like, just be a DNA making machine. Be a thing that is designed to look for other things that could do stuff with the DNA that you've understood already. So then you gotta think of, go before viruses, go before all of these other things that have instructions whatsoever. What's the earliest organisms that you can make? And I would think something that has like the first neurons, and then how could you even start having those? Or do you even need neurons? And according to viruses, you don't need neurons. So you could have something like a virus, which do a thing, but no brain, and has a structure, which has some kind of form function, still no brain. Viruses are crazy, yo. Fungus are even more crazy. When he said about people stealing his videos, I'm sorry. If you take down this reaction video, you are not a scientist. I got my own opinions on things. If you don't want my opinion, That's up to you, but I'm going to say it. So if I have to make another video with simply still frames of your video, tell me in the comments. I'll do that. Because no one else has told me to do that. And reactions are free. But like, yeah, I don't know. The thing is, all these theories are something people can just talk about. It's not just him making these ideas up, it's other people who have these ideas. The information blah paradox idea was like nutty. And where was this thing? Where's this thing? Did we come from Mars? No. No, because if you think of when Mars was made and when we were made, Mars already happened, so we could not have come from Mars. That's ridiculous. We all came from a previous existence stuff, and then those things that were in the previous solar system became stuff like Earth, Mars, and whatever else. But we already done been a thing, and then we became all spread out and where we are now. It is easily thinkable that the possibilities of all life could have been anywhere in the solar system. We just haven't found them. And this is the only place where life could have happened because of Goldilocks zone or whatever other reasons, thermal vents, things, stuff, whatever. Life can happen in all sorts of ways. Who knows? But there's a lot of evidence that or a lot of things that say like life hasn't happened anywhere besides here. But again, who knows? Where's the video I just watched? Information field. Oh yeah, I got pissed off at you for that. Or not so much pissed off. Just it's just another dumb thing. But whatever. Let's watch another.